welcome to the $0 to $5 million podcast. I'm Shawn Finder, and I'm with my co-host, Ollie Whitfield. This show is brought to you by Autoklose, a vanilla soft company. Ollie, why don't you introduce today's guest who we're going to have on the show today?
Yeah, it's good to have a friend on. And we've had a mixture of us debating stuff for a while now, so it's nice to have AJ on. Now, if you don't know AJ, you probably have seen a lot of his stuff on this podcast and in around the things that we do. He's always there or thereabouts. But AJ is the director of marketing at a company called DemandDrive, and I'll let AJ explain what they do. But AJ's here because they've fairly recently, I'm sure he'll remind me of the timing, but they've been acquired. And I wanted to ask him about what that's been like, not as the founder, but as part of the team and a senior member in the team going through being acquired and how it all happened, that kind of stuff. So AJ, welcome to the show. How's it going, dude?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So like Ollie said, I work for DemandDrive. What we do in brass tacks is we help companies build revenue development functions. So we're working on the outsourced sales space, kind of building out a lot of the foundational stuff for companies as they go to market, trying to build and scale that SDR function, fill the top of the funnel, things of that nature. And yes, we did very recently, we had a private equity company come in and purchase a majority stake of the organization. And it's really cool because it's sort of like, yes, the full company isn't owned by the two co-founders we have anymore. They no longer have a majority share. But at the same time, this PE company that came in decided we're hands off, right? Like, you guys know what you're doing. You've grown the business. We're investing so that we can use you as a platform to try and find other avenues for acquisition, for partnership, things like that. So while we do technically have a board meeting now that we have to go to, and we have investors that we're now beholden to, they let us run all the day-to-day operations. So it's pretty sweet. It's almost like nothing's changed. We just have people that we have to report to now.
So I'd like to jump in because I'm obviously been very interested in acquisitions and stuff. But PE firms typically, when they come in, they do want to, and I would like to say if it's the same in your case, is to try and lower costs right away, increase your EBITDA. Kind of get that growth in EBITDA at a certain point, but they don't want to also hold on to the demand drive for too long. Usually PE firms come in, they want to hold you guys for 3 to 5 years and then either sell you to another PE firm or make the next move. How did that, I guess, sit with some of the senior people? Because I mean, they also sometimes like to juggle the execs and the people up in management just to bring some of their own guys in. So I'd like to see how that affected you guys post acquisition.
Yeah. For us, I think, and it was communicated to us pretty clearly that like this is more than anything an opportunity for senior leadership within the company to sort of get their hands into other aspects of the business and really work on growing DemandDrive, not just as like your day-to-day operational job, but strategically you now have someone to kind of work with, to bounce ideas off of and start thinking about like, okay, how can I make a larger impact on sort of the bottom line of the company in terms of what are we doing in the next 2, 3, 5 years, like you said, to either acquire other businesses and kind of roll them up under the DemandDrive brand, using the PE company to help with that, so that we're not just one organization anymore, but now we've got other different like digital marketing services or SEO services or creative and design services that we can roll up under our brand and start offering to clients. So more of like we're not juggling anything around. Senior leadership isn't going to change, but we're going to give you some different avenues to sort of understand, like, how do you grow a business outside of just doing your job on a day-to-day basis?
So when were you made aware of this? I know that obviously it's going to be the owners and the CEO type roles that get approached first, and then the rest of the company is made aware at a certain level. But you're in senior management. So when and how quickly were you involved? Like, was there a part of the vetting process or anything like that you're involved in, or was it a bit closer to the end, or how did it go?
I'm gonna pull up the press release now, so I have an exact date for you. But I mean, we were all on the senior leadership side made aware of it pretty early on, like the discussions that were happening. And I'm pulling it up now. We announced it in February of 2022, so basically like a year ago at this point. But we were made aware of it months before it happened. This private equity company that approached our two co-founders, Dan and Lindsay, they had been in talks for, I want to say like 6-9 months, honestly, kind of going back and forth about whether or not.
That's a long time. That's a long time for private equity firms. Usually it's within 90 days to 6 months and the acquisition's done.
Yeah, they're a small shop. It's just like a few guys locally here in the Boston area. And the conversations, it was very long, drawn out, sort of like, do we want to make this investment? How are we going to sort of, like I talked about before, juggle the idea of using you as a platform to acquire businesses that are complementary to what we do with DemandDrive. So a lot of strategic talks like that. But we were all made aware of it pretty early on, and sort of that gave us the opportunity to get some gears turning in terms of like, well, what does this mean for me? How can I use this to my advantage? How can I use this to help build the company further? Things like that. But yeah, February 18th, 2022. So literally almost like an exact year ago, which is crazy to think about.
So one of the toughest conversations I had to have when my first company got acquired was we had to keep it obviously on the down low with just the senior execs. And the one thing you find is the people that aren't the senior execs, when they find out you've been acquired from a PE firm or you've been acquired from anyone, is my job safe? And it's a tough conversation because it's almost like, it just hits them. I know with Autoklose and VanillaSoft, when we got acquired, I actually put everyone on a Zoom call, announced it, and then had our CEO, David Hood, come on right after to introduce himself. And a lot of people, job security comes to mind and all this other stuff. How did the employees of the company take it that weren't involved in that 9-month grueling process of getting acquired? Because I've been through it and I did not enjoy it.
Grueling is definitely an interesting way to put it. I would say it was so long and drawn out that there were times where we almost forgot that it was happening. But if you're not involved in it on the day to day, but especially for employees who aren't part of like the leadership team here at DemandDrive, it was kind of maybe I think like a week before it happened, it was kind of announced like, hey, we're going to make this announcement. And of course, you can say anything you want. Your day to day isn't going to change. They're not going to put their hands into everyone's sort of buckets and sort of try to manipulate how we do things. Like it's very hands off. Like you can say all of that, but inevitably people are going to think like, is that true? Like, is my job actually secure?
Yeah.
So for us, it was definitely all about that like clear communication from not just the co-founders that we have here at DemandDrive, but like department heads to kind of reiterate that to people within your department, people that you kind of talk with on a day-to-day basis, like socializing the idea that you're fine. Like this is a more than anything strategic acquisition in the sense that like now we're going to have more money. We're going to have more brain power kind of behind growing DemandDrive beyond what you do on a day to day. What you do won't change. But what it means is that the future will look different. So just like be ready for it. It definitely required that.
And were you guys looking for this or did it just like come on your lap? Like I know for example, us, I wasn't looking to get acquired at all. And then we just met at a conference and, the deal just ended up working out 11 months later. Were you guys strategically looking for a PE firm to come in to get more money or looking at different ways and alternatives? Or was this, because of COVID, was it a desperate move or what, like where were you?
It was a bit of column A, bit of column B, not desperate by any stretch of the imagination, but we had this period of growth pre-COVID that was not like stratospheric by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a lot. And it was hyper growth in the sense that like growing from, like 100 to 200 people over the course of like a year and adding new services and bringing in new management. It's a lot to try and balance when you're just two co-founders kind of running a company. So for them, it kind of there was that point, that threshold where it's like, we can't keep doing this by ourselves. And it would make sense for us to look for some outside help. And so I don't think they were like actively looking for a PE company to come in or for, like VC funding or anything like that. Yeah. But organically, it came up through kind of the network of people that we're connected with and through this private equity company that did invest in us. When they got connected with Dan and Lindsay here, it was like, oh, this just like makes sense, right? Like we've hit this period of time where we've grown considerably. Things obviously macroeconomically are changing pretty dramatically right now with COVID, and so it seemed like it was just the right time and the right place, right, for an outside force to come in and sort of be able to help us grow beyond what sort of the capabilities of the senior leadership team that currently existed to be able to do.
So you mentioned more money, and I know before the acquisition, obviously you had a budget. Being a services company, it's not like a software company who's got like Series Z funding and it's just like a crazy number, but you had a budget. I imagine now it's bigger. Outside of that, what else has changed? Like how seismic has this been in terms of impacting your week by week? So I'm thinking, is there different people or different persons that you report to, different things you report on? If there's a bigger budget, is there now more scope for hiring, and what's been bumped up and changed by all of this for you?
Yeah. For me, one of the biggest things that's changed is our ability now to look at acquisition opportunities and partnership opportunities that didn't exist before through this PE network that we now have, to primarily offer up new services that we just had never done before. So we're dabbling in spaces that we've never kind of worked in. We were always very cut and dry, like we build you a sales development function, you grow it, you scale it, you take it in-house, and then we just rinse and repeat for new clients. That's kind of been the bread and butter for the past decade. Now we have a bunch of different services that we're able to offer because of the partnerships and future acquisitions that we have through this PE company that allow us to serve more clients. And for me, that means that my day-to-day and my week-to-week changes in terms of, okay, now I'm supporting more than just the reps who focus on selling DemandDrive. I'm supporting reps who are creating that new messaging for new services that we're offering. I'm writing marketing collateral for something that I don't even know we do yet, but I'm going to get it ready so that in the future, when we do actually offer it, we'll be good to go. So a lot of sort of the day-to-day stuff in terms of how I go to market for DemandDrive changes because the scope at which we now operate has changed. And yes, my budget, I always joked, was technically both zero and infinite dollars in the past, in the sense that I didn't have a set amount of money that I could work with on a regular basis, but if we found something that we desperately needed or I could make the case for, we could end up using it. Now, I still don't have a set budget, but the amount of tools and sort of tech and resources that we're able to use on an internal basis has gone up dramatically because the PE company that we work with is 100%, you guys need this, you should go for it. We now have sort of the backing of their brain power and their institutional knowledge to be able to help us find and source different tech and tools for us to use that we didn't either know existed or they kind of introduce us to because they think operationally it's going to make an impact, which is great because I get more stuff to be able to that I can do instead of just working with freemium versions of tools.
So, one thing, it sounds like that, you guys are happy with the PE firm and the acquisition, but I always know, for example, when I went through the acquisition, and obviously I'm happy with it, there's always some surprises that come on at the end. Was there anything, I'm not sure if the founders maybe mentioned to you, was there anything that, I guess right after the acquisition happened, if it was cash equity, whatever it was, any surprises that happened that you guys were like, oh, you know what? I did not know that this was part. I'll give an example of what ours was. We were about 48 hours away from closing on the acquisition. And, I knew what working capital was, but as a company, it's a SaaS company, we take the revenue before the service is actually built out. So we get paid up front for the year and then we owe the service. But when you're getting acquired, that new company now has to support that customer for the year, even though you've been paid. So we had a huge working capital, say $500,000 that we received in revenue that then comes off the acquisition price. So that was a big surprise for us, 48 hours before our acquisition. Any surprises that come to mind that you could tell the audience?
Nothing that dramatic. I would say, because we've been delivered this message of it's business as usual, nothing changes day to day, you're going to be doing the same stuff. Mentally, right, you think, okay, cool, nothing about my life changes. And then I would say maybe a month afterwards, our co-founders were preparing for their first board meeting, which is something we had never had before because they've never had someone to report to, right? They had
those are not fun either.
And so I wouldn't say that the reporting that we had done prior was sort of ad hoc or bush league, but it definitely wasn't up to the standards, in my opinion, of what I would deliver to a board of investors rather than just my two bosses. So for me, I rehauled nearly everything about the marketing reporting that we do in terms of what are our contributions to the bottom line? How are we impacting the business? And I guess in the back of my mind, I always knew that would have to happen. But when it did, it was more of hey, we've got a board meeting coming up in a week. What do you have for us in terms of reports that we can deliver? And I'm give me a minute. I'm going to change some stuff up real quick, make it look nice, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Nice. So one thing I wanted to ask you, AJ, It's completely slipped my mind. I had so many questions for you before coming on here. I hate
this is
how
a
that
really
happens.
interesting podcast we have. It's kind of different than what we usually do going into the business, but I think this is going to be a lot of great insight for the audience. So anything else, Ollie, that you have? I mean, I can definitely keep going.
I believe in you, Ollie. You'll remember.
It's come back to me because you believe in me. It's come back to me. So when Autoklose and VanillaSoft had their acquisition, one of the first things, obviously being two software companies, was can we try and sync clients across? There's ways that one platform could benefit from using the other one if you're that client, for example. So in your case, how much was it viable and a part of the plan that the PE firm may have other investments, other partners and companies that they can bring across to you, or has that not really been relevant for a particular reason?
Oh, no, it was almost immediate, I would say. We had been, prior to this investment from the PE company, looking for help on the SEO, PPC side of things, something I'm not an expert in by any stretch of the imagination, but was kind of cobbling together my basic knowledge of it to help us run some ads and optimize the site for SEO. But this PE company already has in their portfolio a huge PPC and SEO agency that they work with. And so it was almost immediate fit for us to be like, oh, you're the same PE company investing you that invests in us. Let's talk. And now they're our digital agency. So that was almost immediate for us. And that's definitely one of the big reasons why Dan and Lindsay went forward with actually the acquisition, because they knew that this PE company has connections to services and other tech that we just didn't have, that we would have to go source ourselves, that instead kind of gets delivered to you with a recommendation from someone that you trust, which beats any kind of research that you can do on your own.
So I have a question. I'm not sure how much information you're allowed to give, and I don't want to go into specific numbers and revenue, et cetera. But a lot of people, one of the ongoing debates is obviously service or product companies is what are the multipliers? Because the multipliers on companies have definitely changed from, pre-COVID, where, you can be doing $1 million and getting a 5-10x, where during COVID, companies are basically laying off people because now they want to be profitable. So those are now 4 to 6x. Are you able to give a range of what that multiplier was without giving any revenue numbers or anything on what you were? But you are a service company, so obviously audience, this is different than if you have a SaaS product. Service is very different. But are you able to give any information or no?
I can't give exact numbers. No, I know that we're not doing
range, maybe a range.
We're not doing a 4 or 10x multiplier, right? Obviously very different from SaaS. I was actually, funny enough, talking to my wife the other day, and I was like, oh, well, this company got 10 million in funding because they're a $100 million company. And she's like, how do you know that? I'm like, oh, 10x, that's just normal. And she's like, what are you talking about? That's not normal. You don't just assume a company's 10 times what they get in funding. I'm like, not anymore, but you used to. But we, in terms of the overall valuation of the company, if I had to just give, I would say 2 to 3x is probably the range that I would assume based on, I wasn't in the room when we actually did the deal, but based on what our revenue run rate had looked like over the past few years and what the overall valuation of the company kind of looks like now based on the most recent report that we went through a few weeks ago, actually. I think it was, a 2 or 3x multiplier in terms of what we had been doing to what we got valued at.
And what were, not for you, but in general, in service companies, what was the typical, say, in 2019, 2020, where things were going crazy? What was that multiplier back then?
Man, probably, 4 or 5x. At that time, like I had said, pre-COVID, we had gone through hyper growth in air quotes in terms of just what our company had looked like from 2018 to 2020, vastly different. To the point where the number of net new clients that we had, net new headcount that we added, we had gone maybe, I want to say 10-ish to almost 20 million in revenue over the course of 2 years. Unbelievable growth for us. Of course, all of that, stalls pretty considerably in 2020, but at the path at which we were growing, had we done a deal with a private equity company at that time, knowing the macro environment, I would assume that double, if not more, would have been the valuation compared to what we got now. But, any company in 2018 would probably say the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for joining us. Before I do have one last question for you. How do you currently self-educate yourself? Do you read any good books lately? Any podcasts you're listening to that is not the 0 to 5 million? Anything, and also let people know where they can find you.
Yeah. I'm a big YouTube guy. I love going down YouTube rabbit holes. You watch one video from one company about a topic, and then they recommend a bunch of other videos from either that same company or different companies on similar topics. I just rip through YouTube rabbit holes on a regular basis. I try to carve out like 30 minutes to an hour on sort of a daily-ish basis to kind of go through and just watch stuff. It's the best way for me to kind of ingest things. Recently, I've been doing a lot of community work within Sales Hacker and Brand 30 are two communities that I'll shout out. Love kind of learning from people within those communities and kind of reading through what they're going through on a day-to-day basis for sales, marketing, rev people. Lots of recommendations for like books and podcasts and stuff to listen to in those communities. I'm trying to remember the last book that I read, I think was Gap Selling. And then maybe Never Split the Difference right before that, but I'm trying to go on a fiction kick right now. So
I've read them both.
Blindness by Jose Saramoga is the current book of choice. But yeah, I think I actually published on my LinkedIn profile a list of resources that I had compiled somewhat recently for just like anyone looking to kickstart their career in sales and marketing or scale up from like SDR into management or into marketing and kind of get out of that role. Some stuff that they should take a look at. So A, I'll say you can find me on LinkedIn because you asked me where people can find me, AJ Alonzo on LinkedIn. And B, take a look through some of my featured posts. I think I've got some stuff up there for recommendations of books, podcasts, webinars, stuff like that to take a look at. But I'm a YouTube guy through and through.
Perfect. Well, AJ, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a blast. And also, thank you for everybody that is listening with us today. If you enjoyed the show, don't ever forget to give us a 5-star review wherever you're listening from so you don't miss the next show and our next guest. AJ, Ollie, thank you once again.
Thanks, guys.